to the Springs in the Desert podcast. We're those friends that you can take with you wherever you are on the path of infertility. Welcome back to the Springs in the Desert podcast. I am Jillian, your host, and today I am joined once again by just a good friend of ours at Springs in the Desert. We have Edward Luersman. How are you today, Edward?
I'm doing great, Jillian. It's good to be with you again.
Yes, we really just appreciate your perspective on so many areas of infertility and loss. And today we are going to talk about grief, which is something that all of us in this community experience. But I think there's a lot of hesitancy around grief or questions about grief. We hear from a lot of women and couples in our community that they feel like they can't grieve infertility, or that they don't know what that looks like, or even they might be experiencing grief, but they don't know what to call it. That they don't quite know, what is it that I'm experiencing, or why am I feeling this way? So I think that this conversation is really going to just open up some good understanding of what grief is. So Edward, from your perspective as a mental health professional, could you talk a little bit about some of the losses that are experienced within infertility? Of course, there's clearly the loss of not being able to conceive, but what does that kind of look like? And what are maybe some losses that happen after that or that are around that?
Yeah. I'm so happy we can talk about this, because I think we really need to own that.
Yes.
We need to own that and own that there's a grief, the emotional response to that loss.
Yes.
So anyways, yes, I'm glad that we're talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different losses involved with it, right? Like you said, there's a real void that comes from not being able to grow your family the way that you hoped or expected to.
Right.
So there is that kind of that emptiness that's left there. Even if you are able to conceive or adopt later, there's still that absence of children that could have been there. So, but along with that, think about it, there's the loss of being able to take on the identity as mother or father, to take on that new life state of parenthood. Like, it's a completely life-changing experience, right? And expect that change to happen. And then when it doesn't, then you have to grieve that. And it's very disconcerting. So there's that. There's the sense of community, the sense of belonging. Hey, my friends are having kids, my family, my brother having kids, or all the young adults or adults in the parish seem to be having kids, and I don't feel like I belong. So that sense of I am moving alongside these people, or they're moving alongside me. We can lose that sense of having that. The loss of supportive relationships. I feel like my relationships that I trusted before, and now all of a sudden it feels like maybe they don't understand, or they don't get it, they're not accompanying me, maybe they're not asking me how I'm doing, those kind of things. And then the big thing that I've been thinking about is like the loss of innocence, like how simple things used to be. And now I don't trust that things are going to be easy anymore. And I see that time and time again with clients and personally too. I don't trust that it's going to be easy. Anything's going to be easy anymore. So
wow. You just named so many things that I have experienced that I didn't necessarily even relate to infertility. That's just really profound. And I think I really appreciate that idea. We can own and really put into words that infertility is something to be grieved. It is something that can be really challenging to process and for years to come. Even after, just various life experiences, those things I'm sure can come up again and again. And that's maybe the next question I'd like to ask you. Like, what are like the stages of grief? And I've heard that it's not something that's linear, that it can like ebb and flow, or it can come back up again. So what might that look like for someone?
And something that you just said too, Jillian, that really struck me was like how this impacts us going into the future. And my wife and I have talked about that recently, about how this changes your life path forever. You know, thinking about like, if we do become parents, we're going to be older than what we expected we were going to be and stuff like that. So there are different like stages of like how this loss impacts you now, and then how it impacts you in the future, even if, hey, we can add children to the mix. It's just not the same anymore. We're changed and our life path has changed. But specifically with the stages of grief, you're right. I think there's a misunderstanding, a common misconception that, hey, there's these 5 stages of grief. You just have to linearly move through them. I experienced denial, and then next up is anger, and then I feel depressed. That's actually a really common misconception. Okay. The stages of grief were developed to kind of understand what is it like to go through the dying process. And they were observations of some different stages that the theorists noticed. But it's not a prescription. It's not hey, your grief has to look like this.
Sure, yeah.
And you're right, with infertility in particular, right, it's not linear. We don't just have this one and done loss and then boom, we are angry about it and then we're sad about it and then we are bargaining and then we reach acceptance. No, it's a roller coaster, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Like in particular for infertility, it's up and down. We have hope about the next cycle, then all the hopes get built up where this treatment's going to work, and then it doesn't, and then we're devastated and we're despairing again, and then our hope builds up again, but maybe we're more cautious, and then we get let down again. It's just topsy-turvy. So if anything, I'm like, maybe you like are cycling through a whole bunch of those emotions and maybe other ones. I think it's just helpful to look at the stages of grief as maybe, does this help you think about what you're experiencing? Does this maybe put some words to what you're experiencing? But again, like it's okay if some of it's relatable and some of it's not.
Okay.
Maybe some of it isn't. Maybe you're like, yeah, I experienced something different, or maybe I experienced cycles, or
that is a really helpful perspective to have, because I think, especially because there are like so many great universities to go to and you have to teach tangible markers for people to be able to test on and things. Like I feel like when I was taught these things or when people spoke about them, it was like, these are the 5 stages of grief. This is what it's going to look like. And so look out for that. Like these are helpful things to look out for. But that was it. There wasn't like, so when I was experiencing maybe other feelings, I thought, oh, this isn't grief. This is something else. Like I try to assign it to something else when in fact, maybe it is part of the grieving. And I like what you said about, does it help you put words to what you're feeling? And if not, maybe just forget it. Maybe just put it to the side and realize that your grieving process looks a little different, because it likely does look different than the next person. Yeah, that's really helpful. Well, okay, so for someone in this community or someone experiencing infertility or loss, has now accepted that this is given themselves permission to grieve, that this is really is something to grieve. And now they are realizing maybe some of their feelings or maybe even behaviors can be attributed to that grief. How can we begin to process that? Or what do we do with those feelings now? If we are experiencing maybe one of these more typical stages of grief, like bargaining or anger or whatever, or maybe it's a different feeling or a different response. What do we do now with it? What are some kind of maybe general practical tips you could give us?
Well, I think self-awareness is really important. I think that's the first step, right? We have to recognize what it is that we're feeling. So we really need to dig into that and say, yeah, what emotions or what reactions am I aware of? Is there anything else that I'm experiencing that maybe I haven't noticed before? I think you just got to become aware of, this is a real loss. Again, let's validate that it's a real loss.
Yes.
And then how is that truly impacting me? So dig in a little bit more into your emotional life, your experience. Sometimes hearing other people's, like reading other people's, can be like, oh, wow, that puts words to what I was experiencing. I didn't know. So however you need to do that, like I think reading into a lot of resources can be helpful. So just recognize that. Here's what I'm feeling. And then we need to really like feel those things. Like I think it can be helpful just to enter into that emotional space to say, no, I really do feel down. I feel depressed. I feel devastated, and it's okay for me to feel that way. I'm not going to suppress that. I'm not going to suppress that part of my emotional reaction. I can tell you right now as a therapist that emotional suppression is not a good way, right? not a recommended way of coping with these things.
That's great.
Just like it perpetuates it. It makes us, then we get caught in shame. Why am I feeling this way? I shouldn't feel this way. And then it bottles up. The emotions are like asking to come out and we're pushing them down. If you really are feeling those emotions come up, find a safe way, and you can work with a therapist to figure out how to do that. If you're like feeling overwhelmed and you're like, I don't know how to deal with those emotions if I let them out.
Yeah.
You get help with that. You get support with that's okay. But really working towards actually like going there and letting yourself feel those things. It's incredibly healing to do that. It's freeing.
Yeah.
Again, it goes part and parcel with owning it as loss. But
yeah,
really going into those difficult places where it's cathartic, we're letting it out, then navigate adjusting to this reality, right? Pain. Now we need to figure out how to navigate this reality with loss.
Yeah. Something you just said about when we suppress those feelings, now we can spin into other things, like the containers pouring into other areas of your life. And I'm sure I know I can relate to that whether I don't feel like I can speak about it or if I didn't give myself permission to really feel those feelings that perhaps I let it pour into my relationship with my husband or work or even my understanding of myself or prayer, or I could see that really just overflowing into other areas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate this perspective. Even Anne and Kimberly, the founding mothers of Springs in the Desert, they had mentioned that, I think specifically Anne mentioned that it wasn't until she really started hearing other stories and founded Springs that she realized that infertility is something that can and often should be grieved, and giving yourself space to do that. And and some might be with a mental health professional is around them that can really help them. What are maybe some other common ways? If would you suggest maybe journaling or probably talking about it with your spouse, or what are some other ways that might look?
Yeah. It could be any relationship.
Sure.
Ideally, your spouse would be one of those people that you can open up to, but it can be complicated sometimes if some of the emotions come around, like some disconnects with your spouse. Do you really care about this? Are you actually hit by this? That's a common one that I experienced, which is just we're in different places, or one spouse is more expressive than the other. Ideally, spouse would be another person to talk with, but obviously, if they're implicated and it's complicated, it's okay if you're talking with someone else.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's probably true for many couples. They're just at different places. Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, like you mentioned journaling. That's another really good one. Prayer, expressive prayer, like actually pouring out your heart to God, like it's a conversation, telling him how you're feeling, even if it's in relation to him too. It's okay. You can talk to him about that. But there's a lot of creative ways you can go about that too. There's a lot. I'm not as creative, but some people are channeling that through music or art. Different body-based like movements. Like some people are more into dance or things like that. There's so many creative ways you can go about that. So the limits are endless. You're not limited by my lack of creativity. But those are some of the ones that pop into my head. Whatever resonates with you. That really, you're like, wow, that's my way of channeling my emotions. That's my way of expressing and processing my emotions. Do it. Those
are really helpful suggestions. And I'm sure there are creative ways to process that and allow yourself to experience it while also moving towards this, a more healing understanding and position. So that is so great. Thank you so much for just this, really beautiful advice. These other reflections are meant to be shorter and really practical and helpful for our listeners. So another, way of practicality is, Edward, could you just share with us where you're licensed? And if someone would like to get in touch with you, where do you serve?
Yeah. So I'm located in Central Ohio, and my license is through the state of Ohio. So anybody who is within Ohio, 100%, that's awesome. An option via telehealth or meeting me in person in the Columbus area.
Okay.
If people are outside of state, I'm happy to hear from you and talk with you. And if you're need help looking for a therapist, I'm happy to help. But as of right now, it's tricky. I can't really work with people outside of Ohio. Hopefully we change that with some facts that's coming down the pipeline. Until something changes,
listeners, Edward is just a good dear friend of Springs in the Desert that if you are looking, if you're near, I'm sure he's got many connections and definitely resources in other states that he could direct you to, or at least other resources that might point you in the right direction. So feel free to reach out. His contact information where you can find him will be in the show notes today. Edward, thank you so much for being with us today. And listeners, I want to repeat once again that infertility is definitely something to be grieved. And we just hope to be that friend walking with you on that path. And we hope that this episode can bring a little bit of brevity to what you're experiencing. So we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us for this Springs in the Desert podcast episode. We would be so grateful if you took a minute to rate and review us so that we can reach more listeners. Don't forget to check out our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram, and go to our website, springsinthedesert.org, where you can sign up for our newsletter and community prayer list, read our blog, and register for virtual and in-person events. Most importantly, remember that God loves you so much, and so do we.